Well, hello there, motherfuckers. And need to talk a little bit here about the whole fiasco with Spider-Man. And Spider-Man now is exclusively back with Sony. They denied Disney, being able to put out more Spider-Man movies. They've completely pulled the property from Disney. So Spider-Man was like on a borrowed, it was kind of like a weird agreement where they were kind of licensing him out to Disney. I never fully understood it, but pretty much it all came down to money in the end. And the reason why more than ever, like, I need to make a video on this is because people are like getting the story wrong. What we need to do is we need to, go through all the fanboyism. We need to put aside, how we feel about certain things and all that. And we need to address the elephant in the room. And that's that Disney is money hungry. And they'll stop at nothing until they own everything under the sun. I mean, they own everything. They own Marvel, they own Star Wars, they own a large percentage of cartoon characters, they own numerous channels on TV, and Disney has been ruining a lot of things. See, here, let's read the story first. So we've got an article here on Deadline who first broke the story. So Sony Pictures spent much of yesterday trying to spin Deadline about the prospective loss of Kevin Feige from future Spider-Man films. First, the studio downplayed the idea he might be leaving. Then insiders pinned his exit on added responsibilities from the Fox acquisition of the X-Men franchise. Though they declined to make a statement, all this was reflected as factors in Deadline's break of an important and widely regurgitated story, but sources maintain that Feige's exit was about money. It was about Disney seeking the 50-50 co-fi stake as the price for Marvel and Feige's continued guiding hand that resulted in the delivery of Sony's biggest grossing film ever. Sony declined to meet those terms. It was an aggressive stance by Disney, which already owns the merchandise on Spider-Man, and a tough nut for Sony to swallow, giving up half of its most valuable franchise. But these talks had been going on for some time. Had Sony agreed to Disney's ask, Marvel and Feige would not have withdrawn from the Spider-Man film, sources said. So right there, I know, I preach it more than anybody. You can't, believe what you read and all that. But come on, this is pretty believable. Leave it to Disney to, when people are saying, oh, Sony ruined it, because the whole thing is, the argument is Sony did not know how to handle Spider-Man properties and X-Men, even though Sony have proven that they can make decent movies. Spider-Man, it was one of those movies that people were happy with the whole, and I gave them glowing reviews here. Homecoming and Far From Home were great movies. But, people felt that Sony was incompetent on, handling Marvel properties, and Disney was doing such an excellent job. So people view this as, Sony should just be stupid and just hand everything over to Disney. And you see it's like a growing meme on the internet how Disney has to have a hand in everything. People complain about an oversaturation of the Star Wars. So I don't really see where this whole thing is coming from. Basically what Disney does is they're very uncreative right now. They want to take all these properties, own everything. They want to remake everything. And they're doing it with Spider-Man. Everything was rebooted, and I didn't have a problem with it because this was a way better reboot than the Andrew Garfield reboot. But Sony's been rebooting, their Disney rather has been rebooting all of their franchises, all of their characters, The Lion King, Aladdin, Little Mermaid. And now they want to own all of this. And then, of course, now that, Disney now owns the X-Men, that was also probably going to be rebooted as well. And it's just, come on already. They had to, have a large stake in Spider-Man. It wasn't good enough that they were making money and sharing the money with Sony, and everybody could get a piece of the pie. No, they needed to have more money, and I get it. And people need to understand that on the other side too. I need to understand that Disney is a business. They want to make as much money as possible. But you need to understand too that Sony can't be completely stupid and just, say, oh, take one of our highest grossing characters. That doesn't make any sense. But more people seem to be siding with Disney just because they enjoyed Far From Home, as did I. But you can't expect Sony to just give up, and go into the fetal position and ride off into the night and just let Disney win. See, there needs to be some type of trust busting, not even in, just in the business place, but it needs to be done in Hollywood as well, because look at this. Disney is going around buying up every single property. And how about, for example, the deal with Netflix? Buying up all of these different characters, putting an end to Daredevil, putting an end to Jessica Jones, putting an end to Cage, putting an end to The Punisher, all these different series, just so they could take these shows and, just pretty much do away with half of them and then relaunch it on their own streaming network. And I've talked about how I felt about, different streaming networks. You've got CBS All Access, DC has their streaming network. Now Disney wants to have their streaming network. It's like enough already. How many streaming networks are you going to have on top of, the ones that pretty much cemented their legacy as being the original ones, which is, Netflix and Hulu. Now, everyone's got to get queued and get their own little streaming platform. But, of course, let's forget all that, because, it's all about Disney and everything. And it's like, first of all, I've said it a number of times, Disney has done a lot of good for Marvel. They've obviously really catapulted comic book movies and made them into like a global phenomenon. More than they really were. I mean, these movies make tons and tons of money, but there is definitely an overkill in the marketplace when it comes to these superhero movies. I mean, it's like, for example, I really liked Far From Home. I watched it, but it didn't quite grab me the same way as Spider-Man 2 did. And I've talked about this on a number of occasions. Back then, when those original Spider-Man movies came out by Sam Raimi, there wasn't really anything like it. There really wasn't anything to compare it to. You had Batman movies, from the 90s. You had the X-Men movie that was out at the time, a few years prior to that. And, you hadn't had a Superman movie in years, so it was like there really wasn't a lot. You had the Blade movies. You had a terrible Daredevil movie. Well, actually, I don't think that came out until later on, but you get the point. There really wasn't a lot out there. So, it felt like a special event when one of these, big franchise films would come out, but now you've got them coming out on a consistent basis. Every few months there's a superhero movie. 1 month it was Captain Marvel, then it was Doctor Strange, and it was time for the Avengers, and then it was time later on for the Avengers. And at least with the Avengers there was a little bit of a gap. There was like a 3-year gap, but then they had to do Civil War, which was sort of an Avengers movie more than the Captain America movie. And then they so there really wasn't as much of a gap, and the movies started to be released consecutively, like without any time to breathe, and that really affected it. And Disney's got this thing now where they just want to keep remaking everything, keep rebooting everything without having to come up with original ideas. So here you have just the problem here is you have a very greedy company that is obsessed, that needs to own everything, that things need to go their way. So there's a lot more here than, Sony just being mean and not letting, Disney walk all over them so they can make Spider-Man movies, just because they want a bigger piece of the pie. It makes sense. Why would Sony agree to this 50-50 stake when they're not really gaining anything from it? They're losing it. See, I think a lot of people need to readdress this situation, read the article. I've just read a portion of it to you, the part that's most relevant here. You got to understand that if it doesn't make business sense, then Sony's not going to agree to it. That's a pretty bad deal. If you agreed to a 50-50 deal, unless you're a complete moron and know nothing about business, why would you agree to somebody, a third party owning 50% of your property? You know what I'm saying? Unless you're profiting off of it, it doesn't really make any sense to do that. But, everyone just wants to view it as like, they're keeping me from my movies. The fanboys got to understand. First of all, like I said, the Marvel is on total overkill right now. They're in overkill mode right now. Where, we don't really need all these movies. It's too much. They need to take a step back as it is. Take some breathing room. Because really, like I'm saying, like, a lot of these movies have been good. Endgame was good. It wasn't fantastic. I didn't really see it as being a big epic that really, blew my mind or anything like that. I saw things ridiculous to the point of people saying that it was on par with the Star Wars trilogy, the Avengers movies, and I was just like, you've got to be kidding me. I mean, come on. But anyway, this is now gotten to the point where it kind of needs to be addressed, and it really, like, at least Sony wasn't like Lucasfilm and just completely caved in and says, take everything from me, just completely just sell it out. And they weren't asking for everything. I'm sure people are going to say that, for the sake of making a quality film, they should have just caved in. And I'm here to say, from someone who actually enjoyed both Homecoming and Far From Home, it was not a good idea. And I stand by Sony making that decision. Like I said, unless they were a complete, couple of incompetent morons over at Sony Pictures, they hold everything in their right to deny Disney of that, quite frankly, insulting offer. It really is kind of insulting. 50%. Why would you give 50%? It doesn't make any sense at all. Kevin Feige is a competent director, but he's not Steven Spielberg. He's not George Lucas or anything like that, So it wouldn't have made any sense. So that's my 2 cents on it. You could read the article for yourself on Deadline. I encourage you to do so. I'm sure a lot of people are going to take away from it that, that of course that Sony should have the best interest of the fans in mind, but it's never been about the fans. And if you think that Disney is about the fans, then if any fan service that was offered up in those movies was just to get you to come back to for more movies. Like I said, people didn't even want to admit it, but a lot of the movies in the Marvel universe, cinematic universe, the MCU, were very lazy. They didn't really give you a lot, and a lot of people even admitted to that, saying that they know that it wasn't that great, but they were building towards something bigger. It was a lot of excuses and things along that way. I mean, I said, as a whole, Disney did a fine job with a lot of these movies, and they're going to continue to make these movies. Like I said, it's only one character. It happens to be my favorite character, but come on, you can't expect Sony to take such a ridiculous offer like that just so you could enjoy future Spider-Man movies. Sony will continue. It's probably going to be ridiculous. They're probably going to reboot this series again. Could you imagine that? Spider-Man getting a third reboot? I mean, honestly, we started with the Raimi films. We got the Andrew Garfield reboot, the Tom Holland reboot. Now we're gonna get another actor. It's completely ridiculous, and it just shows like it is complete overkill in Hollywood right now. It's remakes, reboots, unasked for sequels, and superhero movies. That's all you get now. There's nothing else. There's no good ideas. There's no new ideas, and any new or good ideas, they pretty much get buried or lost in the shuffle. So anyway, guys, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click the bell so you get all the notifications when I post all my new videos. And guys, by the way, check out my Twitch if you haven't. It's twitch.tv/The Brad Rules Live, and check out my live streams, which will also be posted here on this channel once the stream ends over there on Twitch. And guys, I will see you next time.